What is up, loyal lads and ladies? My name is Midnight Wolf, and welcome to another episode of the Wolf on the Field show. In today's episode, we're going to be reacting to the Oklahoma's beatdown of Iowa State in the second Big 12 matchup of the Oklahoma season. I will also later on go over the AP poll and kind of do like a little reaction to it and maybe some of the concerns or issues that I have with it. There was just some egregious spots that I really couldn't wrap my mind around, that I really feel the need to talk about it because it just makes no sense, the AP poll. And I'm glad it's not the official poll, because if that was, I just don't understand their reasoning on some of that. So anyways, we'll get to that later on. Right now we got to celebrate the victory against Iowa State. So let me go ahead and let's pull up the score here. So Oklahoma, they beat Iowa State 50-20. So we hung half 100 on Iowa State. Now, people are gonna, of course, criticize, well, it's Iowa State, they're not any good. But I mean, they did well against OSU. I know OSU is not that great, but overall, like last year, this would have been a much closer game. So the fact that we had a much better performance, I should say, overall. Now I'll get into some of the sketchy parts of the game here in just a little bit, but before I get too deep into it, just like I did with all the other teams that Oklahoma has played, I want to congratulate Iowa State. They did well in the first quarter and even a little bit of the second quarter, so way to make it at least competitive during those that little moment of the game. I think what that did was it kind of woke our Sooners up and realized, hey, we should definitely like play this game. And so props to you guys for actually coming to play and being ready for it. So I just wanted to kind of quickly congratulate you guys. Now go win the rest of your games. Obviously, I'm going to say that for selfish reasons, because any team that Oklahoma plays, I want them to do really well the rest of the season. So, just keep winning your games. And I know a lot of our opponents will have to play each other at some point, but, where you can win your games, win them. And yeah, the better you guys look, the better we can look. So, but I mean, we're kind of in this together. That's the kind of the whole idea of a conference. So, we kind of build each other up as well as tearing each other down, of course, in the trash talking before these games. But no, so I congratulate you, Iowa State, for at least making at least part of the game something to get nervous about. But moving on, starting off the game, another turnover. That was awesome to see. It was great to see another turnover. We got 2 of them in total that game. So we're averaging like 2 turnovers a game, 2 to 3 even, I think, a game. So that is really good for where we were last year compared to this year. So a huge night and day improvement in that regard. So like, turnovers, like if there's anything that Alex Grinch got right, is turnovers can win ball games. And we definitely saw that. I mean, there was a huge momentum shift in the second quarter, near the end of the second quarter, when we got another turnover. So, and we were able to score off of it. And then we got another special teams great play in regards to blocking the punt. And yeah, he probably should have landed on that and not like thrown it out of the back of the end zone, but hey, we got a safety out of it. So hey, that's a a points that's points that we have not gotten yet this season is a safety. So a different kind of safety, but it's a safety nonetheless. So I mean, yeah, it stinks that we didn't turn that drive into a touchdown, but hey, we got some points on that. And then I think the drive right after that, or maybe we did get a touchdown. Now I'm blanking, but I did have kind of a day to sleep on some of this to process, but some of it I guess kind of got lost in translation. So, but no, overall the defense, they did an outstanding job in the second half and a little bit of the second quarter as well. So I'll kind of get into that in here just a little bit, but we did go through a rough patch. There, right after that pick six at the beginning of the game, Oklahoma's defense just kind of had a weird moment, and I hate to like throw excuses out there, but it definitely felt like one of those kind of moments where, you know, this is a game right before a major game coming up, and you get a pick six to start the game off. I feel like it was at that moment that our defense was like, "Oh, we got this. You know, we don't need to try. You know, we're gonna beat Iowa State and move on to Texas." And I think Iowa State, they took advantage of that mentality and they made it a ball game for a little bit there. I mean, it was tied 21-20 going into the second quarter. I don't think they scored in the second quarter. They might have scored in the second quarter, but I mean, it was still a very close game in the first and second quarter. It wasn't until like the halfway point when we got that second turnover that things really kind of started going into the defensive mode that we've been used to seeing the last couple of weeks. So other than that little hiccup, I mean, people seem to be kind of out of place or just not making the right reads. I noticed my dad, he kind of noticed that it seemed like the guys were going after the football rather than going after the players in terms of those deep passes down the field. And I have to agree with that. I think that was a good analysis of that. The fact that we had just blown plays, and that's going to happen in college football. You're going to have those moments where you're just going to mess up, and it's not about how you mess up. It's about what you do with the mess up and how you come back from it. And that is, I think, the key in this reaction of this game is Oklahoma's backs were up against the wall. They were backed up into a corner in the second quarter. But the defense finally decided to wake up and they made their adjustments. You know, in previous seasons with, you know, a different coach, and even with Bob Stoops, let's be honest, like our defense wasn't the greatest on the second half of his tenure at Oklahoma. You know, they would get to that point where their backs were up against the wall and they would break. They would fold. And to see us not fold and actually it really kind of woke us up, and we were able to pull away pretty quickly at the end of the second quarter. I mean, it was 40-20 at the end. So the fact that we were able to wake up and make our adjustments and figure out ways of stopping Iowa State from getting more of those big chunk plays is a major thing. And still, 20 points out of 5 games. Out of 5 games, the defense has only given up 20 points or less. That is amazing. Like, we're not used to that here in Oklahoma. And so I'm really starting to drink the Kool-Aid, if you guys haven't noticed, on this team. I'm getting very excited, especially with what we have next week. But I want to leave some of the discussion for the preview video later on about OU Texas, but this has me really excited. And that's just on the defensive side of the ball. I mean, the offense, they did their job. Like, that was amazing. Dillon Gabriel had probably, arguably, his best performance to date was against Iowa State. I mean, he was on point. It wasn't as efficient as some of the other games, but he looked a little bit more comfortable, like he's been in the last couple of games, and he was just playing lights out. And 50 points against a decent Iowa State defense, I mean, there's not much more you can say. That was a great performance. In terms of the offensive line, they did a pretty decent job. At least, I mean, I think we're a pretty good offensive line in terms of pass rushing. Maybe not necessarily the running game, and I'm kind of get to that here in just a second, but the offensive line, I think we have a decent offensive line. They're certainly not horrible, and they're not the greatest. They definitely have their flaws, like we mentioned earlier about the running game, but they seem to be doing an excellent job at keeping Dillon Gabriel upright. I mean, I think we only gave up like 1 sack, and I think that was the 4th one out of 5 games. So if that is an accurate stat, that's really all you can really ask for in regards to the pass rush. Now, in terms of the running game, I have mixed feelings about it. I do agree that having a good, solid running game will help you win games. However, I feel like many people are putting a little bit too much of an emphasis on the running game. And my opinion is, if it's not there, don't force it. And I feel like this kind of push to establish a running game is getting people a little bit too uneasy. I feel like it's like we're good in a lot of other areas, but we got to have that running game. And don't get me wrong, running game is important, but we also live in a day and age where it's sometimes backwards, where you want to do a lot of passing to then open up the running game. So it kind of goes hand in hand. People are going to expect Oklahoma to probably throw the football. And so I would throw until they can start to stop that, and then that will probably make the running game happen. But we can't force it if it's not there, in my opinion. I say we focus on our strengths and not our what many would call our weaknesses. Now, in terms of more specific players, I'm sorry, I'm not impressed with Major. I don't think that he's the guy. I just don't see why we keep trying to force him to be the guy. I get it, he's been around a while, but he's not able to find the holes. He's not able to get yards after contact. It's like you blow on him and he falls over. I don't see. I would rather take Sawchuk over Major. However, I personally think that Walker's our best running back. I think that he has the talent to take this team a little bit further in the running game. I mean, we saw that on that 40-plus yard run. Yeah, granted, it came back because of a holding penalty, which it was, I mean, the guy did fall on the ground, and maybe he tugged on his jersey, maybe he didn't, but that holding penalty didn't really affect his run. Like, if it was a good, solid block, he found the hole and he went 40-plus yards. So people have been wanting that big explosive play in the running game. That was it. It just got called back on us. And that was with Walker. Like, the moment he was in, he was getting 5+ yards a carry. Granted, he only got like a handful of carries. And so I feel like he's our guy. I don't get why we're so focused on Major to where we're going to completely overlook I think who I think is the guy until proven otherwise. Now he may not be the best in practice, and that may be why they're going with Major, but at least in the game, he's much better than Major. And just night and day different. I just don't get it. I hope Barnes is okay. I hope he continues to heal up so that he can be a force. I hope that he can figure something out and get that sorted out. But I really feel like if we're gonna put an emphasis on the running game, we need to get the right guy in position, and I think that guy is Walker. But all that to say, the adjustments that were made in the second quarter, I mean, you cannot ask for a better finale. I mean, we shut Iowa State out in the second half. They didn't score anything in the second half. That is something that is important. Yeah, you may not have the greatest first half, but if you can finish the game, you're going to go places. And so I'm very happy and very proud of this 50-20 performance. Like, obviously, I wish it was less points on the Iowa State side. Like, those blown, like, if you take out those blown chunk plays, this would have been a much different ballgame. They probably would have only had like 6-7 points maybe. So all that to say, like, I'm very happy with what we saw. Is there room for improvement? Absolutely. But at the end of the day, once again, for like the 5th time in a row, we've covered the spread. And that's all you can ask for. Everybody like assumed that Oklahoma was gonna like be the favorite for however many. I don't even remember what the spread was, but I know we covered it, and we covered it pretty soundly. So I mean, obviously the next test will be in the game to come in this next week. That will be our one and only test as far as the nation's concerned. But I think that we have a much better schedule than what people give OU credit for. And I don't know. I really feel good about this going into OU Texas. I thought that this was a great performance, a great test to be prepared for Texas. And I mean, there's not much more you can say about that. So I definitely, with it being OU Texas week, I do want to do more preview type stuff this week. We'll see how my work schedule goes with that. So anyways, in terms of the post game reaction, that part of the video is complete. So if that's all you came for, I do appreciate you taking the time to hear my thoughts on Oklahoma versus Iowa State. Now we are going to be moving on to the AP poll. So let me go ahead, and I've actually taken the liberty of putting it on my end instead of going to the website, because the website is filled with a ton of ads and they get kind of annoying. So I figured I would just do the hard work at getting the teams lined out on my own screen, so that way we don't have to deal with all those dumb ads. So anyways, now I'm not going to get very far in this before having some major problems with this poll. There's some good things to it, but there's just a lot in this week's poll that I'm just not too happy about. And I'm really happy that this is not the poll that determines the national champion, because it's ridiculous. This is dumb. It makes no sense. There's so many inconsistencies with it that just make absolutely zero sense. And I'm let's just go ahead and get started, because yeah, I want to get through some of the teams that I really don't have a preference on, but you know, they're undefeated. So like Louisville, Fresno State, they're undefeated. awesome. I want people who win their games to have priority over teams that lose. So the fact that they're even on the in the top 25 and 24, that's awesome. I don't have a problem with them. You could probably insert a couple of other undefeated teams. I think Maryland is one of those teams that could also probably be up there. In fact, that's kind of where we get to our first issue with the poll. I mean, come on. LSU loses 2 games and they're still in the top 25. It's like, what do they like? I read a comment on a reaction to this poll, and they're like, what does LSU have to do to get knocked out of the poll? And I have to agree with that. It's like, are you kidding me? They lost 2 games. There's plenty of other games that are undefeated right now that deserve a spot over LSU. And I know, oh, they lost to Ole Miss. I know, oh, they lost to, I think, was it Florida? I think Florida beat them. I could be wrong. Now I'm blanking on their first loss, but still, maybe it was Florida State. I think it was Florida State that beat them. But anyways, they have 2 losses. That is unacceptable. And Tennessee, I mean, granted, I love Tennessee. I love Heupel. I love what he's done there. But the team that beat them is not ranked right now. I just don't get that. Like, I don't understand that. Like, so say what you will about Tennessee. The fact that their head to head is below them in the rankings just makes absolutely zero sense. So it's like, if you think that Florida is bad enough to not be ranked, which I agree with, then Tennessee should not be ranked until proven otherwise. So I right off the bat, we already run into some problems with this. I'm okay with Missouri being at 21, at least they're ranked, but I feel like, once again, they're an undefeated team and they're ranked 21 when there's a bunch of other teams mixed in that are 1-loss teams. Or even, I think there might even be another 2-loss team. No, just LSU. Yeah, just LSU is the only 2-loss team that is ranked right now. But it's just, it's so dumb. But Missouri, that, you know, they could arguably be pushed up higher up. I mean, they should be probably ahead of Duke and Utah. Like, I just don't understand why they are undefeated yet are penalized. I mean, at the time, now I know the rankings only really truly matter about how the rankings end up in terms of strength of schedule, but I mean, Missouri beat Kansas State and they started the season like ranked like 14 or 15 or something like that. I mean, they were fairly highly ranked and they beat them, yet they're not ranked right now. That doesn't make any sense. Or they're not highly ranked, I should say. And they just now got ranked like this, I think this last poll update. So, I mean, they should be ranked higher. There's inconsistencies there. Then you get to Kentucky. I'm happy with where they're at. However, once again, I think that they could probably be ahead of Duke and Utah at least. I mean, because you have a couple other teams that are 1-losses like Mississippi and Oregon State. However, they do have some quote unquote quality wins that kind of helps keep them up a little bit. So I can understand them being 15 and 16, but I'll get to them here in just a little bit. Duke, once again, I feel like Duke and Utah, I don't understand how teams that are undefeated can be behind them. It's like, who has Utah played to deserve such a high status? And the fact that they've lost a game now, I feel like, teams that are undefeated should be ahead of them. And then Duke, I mean, their best opponent so far that they've won at, I believe, was Clemson. And in terms of the one that they've won, now their other opponent, Duke or Notre Dame, they held Notre Dame, pretty solidly. They almost won that game, but I feel like Notre Dame is even overrated. And so that's why I feel like I have a lot of problems with even just the start of this list. And we haven't even gotten to the meat of it yet. Miami, once again, they're 4-0. They're undefeated. However, they had a bye, I believe, this week, so it's hard to kind of move a bye week team because they're off they don't have as much data to go off of as other teams that have played 5 games. So I'm okay with Miami being at 17. It's not a big deal. I do think that they're a better football team than that. But they will have plenty of opportunities to prove themselves in the future. So I'm not too terribly upset about Miami. But then you have Ole Miss, once again, another one-loss team, and Oregon State as well, another one-loss team that is ahead of some undefeated teams, especially Kentucky and Missouri, who are 5-0 right now. It makes no sense. And then you have UNC, once again, kind of like a bye week situation where they're 4-0. So I really don't care too much about UNC. Yeah, they did well against South Carolina, but I mean, I feel like South Carolina has kind of been a little overrated myself in terms of how the public approval of them, and that's like UNC's only solid win. So North Carolina, I'm okay with them being at 14. I feel like they'll have opportunities to kind of prove themselves in the future. But right now, I'm okay with them being at 14. Washington State, I mean, they've been looking really solid. I mean, the Pac-12, I feel like the Pac-12 could be up for grabs. Now, there are a couple of Pac-12 teams that I feel pretty confident are going to win out, or at least be contenders. I have 2 to be exact that I definitely think will most likely make it to the Pac-12 championship game, or has the best opportunity to, but I'll get to them here in just a little bit. But Washington State, they're a pretty solid team, and I don't see why they're not getting any kind of love in the polls when you compare them to teams like Alabama and Notre Dame. I don't get it. I don't get how Notre Dame and Alabama can be at where they're at, and we'll get to them here in just a second. I'm okay with Oklahoma being at 12. As an Oklahoma fan, obviously, I'm an Oklahoma fan. I really kind of wish it was a top 10 matchup between OU and Texas this week. I was really pushing for that narrative just because how cool would that be? I mean, I don't know the last time Red River was a top 10 matchup. I think 2011 was the last time both teams were undefeated, but I don't really know what they were ranked when they played each other. But the fact that we're not a top 10 kind of stinks in that regards, but I'm okay with it as long as you have undefeated teams ahead of us. The fact that we have Alabama, who lost to Texas and then struggled against FSU, or is it FSU or is it USF? I'm getting that, or it was USF, my bad, because FSU is Florida State. But they struggled against an inferior opponent right after losing to Texas. So this is like clearly a not as good Alabama team. Now, yes, they beat Ole Miss, but it's, I mean, Ole Miss really hasn't really shown anything too crazy just yet. I mean, they've been winning their games for the most part, but they haven't really just looked dominant in their games. At least enough to make headlines kind of thing. So I feel like I feel like Alabama should at least be like 14 or 15 behind like Washington State and even UNC, and maybe even behind Miami, maybe even behind Duke and Kentucky. But I mean, I don't want to penalize the team too terribly much, but for losing a game. But when you have other undefeated teams, I mean, what can you do? Like, teams are winning their games. They should be rewarded, right? And then you have Notre Dame, who lost to Ohio State and almost lost to Duke. So if anything, Notre Dame should also be out of the top 10 because they almost lost to Duke, and you have Duke at 19. Makes no sense. And then you have USC, who I mean, this is probably their best placement compared to Oregon. This is probably the only spot that they got right in terms of the order of between Oregon and USC, because they have a common opponent in Colorado. Oregon dominated Colorado, and it looked like USC was going to dominate, but then they let Colorado back in the game. And if they would have gotten that onside kick, they would have had an opportunity to tie it up or even win that game. And so clearly Oregon is the better team if you're going off of common opponents. So I'm good with the order. I probably wouldn't have USC at 9. Maybe 10 at the highest. But I don't know. I'm not too terribly impressed with USC just yet. They haven't really gotten the chance to truly prove themselves. Because and it's really mainly their defense. Their offense is stout. Obviously they have Caleb Williams. He's a great player. Probably could win another Heisman, possibly. But their defense is their weakest point. I mean, we know as Oklahoma fans what that's like to have a elite offense but be very, very bad in defense. And I feel like USC is going to have that as long as Lincoln Riley is that coach, unless he can, I hate to say this, hire a better defensive coordinator. But I'm just not, I feel like USC is just way too overhyped. I think that their defense will be the bane of their existence. I think that they're their Achilles heel, and they will be found out in the weeks to come. I mean, they've got a very tough schedule. They've got to play Oregon, Washington. I think they play Notre Dame, maybe. I want to say they play Notre Dame. Now I'm blanking in that regards, but they've got a very difficult schedule, and I will be very shocked if they come out on the other side undefeated. And if they do, awesome. They proved me wrong. And if Oklahoma can win next week and win the rest of their games, we might could see an awesome matchup between USC and Oklahoma. That would be interesting. So in terms of Oregon and Washington, I think Oregon has been the more dominant, consistent team. I think that in the Pac-12, like a week ago, I would have said Washington. I was kind of getting on the Washington hype train a little bit, but their performance against Arizona kind of had me worried a little bit. It kind of showed that, okay, Washington is human. For a while, they looked like they were going to be pretty elite. But their performance against Arizona, and teams are going to have bad games. So, I mean, maybe that's all it was. But I'm not too happy with what Washington did against Arizona. I think that Oregon, if we're gonna talk about consistency, I think Oregon's been the most consistent in the Pac-12, and that's why I have them above Washington. And I would even push them up into the top 5. I really think that Oregon has, of the Pac-12 group, probably the best chance of making the playoffs this year, just based on their consistency. Now they may have that argument of like, other than Colorado, who have they played, kind of situation like a lot of these other teams that people like to talk about terrible schedules. But I just feel like Oregon has been the most consistent team, and they've dominated just about every one of their games. So I like Oregon. I like what they've been doing, and until somebody can slow them down, I think that Oregon is going to win the Pac-12 this year. So now, granted, they do have a difficult schedule, and it could be a situation where the Pac-12 kind of like destroys each other from the inside. It could be a situation where like Washington may beat Oregon, and Oregon beats USC, and USC beats Washington. It could be like this weird like 3-4-way tie in the Pac-12, just because of the nature of these teams. So I'm very interested to see what happens in the Pac-12 this year, because they have a lot of talent, and it's very poetic. It being their last season. Very interesting that their last season they are getting a lot of favor and hype. And that could be it too. It could be, oh, it's their last season, we should rank these teams higher than what they normally would be in seasons past. That's kind of what it seems like a little bit, but still, that's awesome to see that, a conference that's about to disband seems to have the better talents. But time will tell. We'll see how how the dust settles in the Pac-12. But anyways, Penn State, I like their spot at 6. I'm a big fan of Ohio State this year. I normally I hate Ohio State. I really hate any of the teams that have been pretty dominant going to the playoffs. But of the Big Ten teams, I feel like Ohio State is the better team. And for me, it just kind of revolves around Michigan. Like, like the exact same argument that people have against Oklahoma in regards to strength of schedule. I just have a problem with Michigan's strength of schedule. And they could be really good, and they have opportunities to prove themselves. And, if they do, awesome. But I feel like Ohio State, if we're talking the Big Ten, has been the more consistent team within the Big Ten narrative. So I really like Ohio State in the Big Ten, and I think that they are more deserving of a higher rank. But Florida State's kind of a weird one. They're kind of like on an island in terms of the ACC. Are they the only ranked ACC team? Maybe is North Carolina an ACC team? Maybe. Okay, I think Louisville is. Yeah, not very many ACC teams, and if they are, they're kind of in the back half of the list here. I want to confirm this real quick. I know Louisville is. Okay, North Carolina is. So the ACC is kind of hurting this year. They seem to be kind of one of the worst conferences. I don't know. I feel like, because of Florida State's struggles, I feel like if we had a tie between a undefeated SEC team, an undefeated Big Ten team, an undefeated Pac-12 team and an undefeated Big 12 team. And then, of course, an undefeated ACC team. I feel like the ACC is going to be left out this year. That's just kind of a hunch, just because of, like, so far their best team, like, yeah, they won their games, but they've kind of done it in ugly ways. And so I just feel like if you had a matchup between the 5 different conferences of undefeated teams, I feel like Florida State would get left out. So I don't know. That Florida State's kind of a weird one. 5 maybe is a good spot for them for now, and the rest will kind of pan itself out because Ohio State has to play Michigan, so that would, one of those teams will knock each other out of the top 4, which would give Florida State a good solid reason to be in the top 4. Georgia might struggle. Honestly, like, if I had to rank the top 4 teams, I don't have a problem with who is there right now in the top 4, but I would probably rearrange them. I would probably have Ohio State number 1, Texas 2, Michigan 3, and then Georgia 4. And before people get on to me about, well, Georgia's the back-to-back champion, I agree with you. Like, I feel like the back-to-back national champion should always have an opportunity to win a third one. However, there's 4 spots. There are 4 spots in the playoff. So they could literally be in any one of those spots and still be able to claim that third title. And so that's why I can justify bumping them down to 4, because I feel like they haven't really done anything to prove me otherwise. But I still think that they should deserve a shot until they lose. Once they lose, I feel like other teams that are undefeated should be placed ahead of them. But until they lose, I feel like they should be given the benefit of the doubt because they are the reigning champion. But I definitely feel like there are better teams than Georgia this year, and that's why I feel like they should be better ranked. And you could also throw Oklahoma into that mix. Obviously, I'm going to say that as a Sooner fan, but I do like, from a non-biased perspective, we're going to have the opportunity to prove ourselves when we play Texas. So, like, obviously that will iron itself out with Alabama. Obviously, I hate the fact that Alabama is ahead of Oklahoma because Oklahoma's undefeated, Alabama's not. But that will get worked out when we play Texas. If we beat Texas, then we deserve to be ahead of Alabama. If we lose to Texas by a closer margin, we deserve to be ahead of Alabama. But that'll get worked out. If we lose by a lot points, then okay, AP poll got it right, and all right, that's fine, and we can move on. But I just feel like Oklahoma, like, they're 1 win away from being a top 5 team. That's something that with how reluctant they are to putting Oklahoma in the top 10, even now, I just have this feeling that Oklahoma beats Texas, they're not going to put Oklahoma in the top 4. I just have this feeling that they'll probably put Oklahoma in top 5, and they'll probably, in that situation, they'd probably put either put Florida State in ahead of Oklahoma, or they would put either Oregon or Washington, depending on how they do next week. Maybe even Penn State, if they can come out with a solid win next week as well. Like, I just have this feeling that no matter what we do against Texas, the AP poll is not going to like Oklahoma, and they're going to keep us out. Now, that being said, I don't have a problem with that because at the end of the day, I hate the AP polls. Anyways, I think that there's clearly bias in the polls, and I think that at the end of the day, theirs doesn't even truly matter. What matters is the playoff committee's poll, and I think that the playoff committee has a little bit more respect for teams like Oklahoma or even Washington State or even Oregon. And I think they will get it right. I at least hope they get it right to start things off in October 31st. So, but at the same time, even though the AP poll doesn't matter, I do feel like it does influence in some way, shape, or form the playoff polls. I mean, people look at the AP poll, and obviously ESPN and Fox, they adhered to that until the college football playoff poll. That's hard to say. They adhere to it until that poll comes out, and then of course everything switches over to the college football playoff poll. But I would imagine that some of the playoff committee's opinions about these teams, especially the eye test and all that other garbage reasons to rank teams, some of it stems from the AP poll and maybe even some of the other polls like the coaches poll and that sort of thing. But I'm pretty sure that these other polls, public opinion polls, have some sort of effect on the actual polls. Maybe not a whole lot, but it does affect it. And that's why I feel like it is important to get some of this stuff right with as little bias as possible. And that kind of brings me into the next thing that's kind of a bonus thing to talk about. And that is my poll that I have. So I haven't worked on it since week 1 for obvious reasons. If you've watched or followed along with that, it took me an entire week to fill out 133 teams information on that poll. So I decided to only update that poll at this, after week 1, after week 6, the halfway point, which is actually going to be next week. And then at the end of the season, I will do the final result. And that's how I will do it. Because if I did the poll every week, that'd be a lot of unnecessary work. Because it really doesn't matter really in the middle of the season where teams end up. It really matters how they finish. So that is kind of why I'm breaking up this way. But I do want to see an update of kind of where they are at on my poll or my spreadsheet. So I do have a spreadsheet that I have created to automatically input point values to various parts of the game that people can earn, and that goes into the system, and it automatically ranks teams based on who has the highest amount of points. And I'm really interested in seeing where teams lie halfway through the season. I think it'll be fascinating to kind of see where they're at, and kind of through that poll I plan on doing kind of a mid-season prediction. I'll probably have a pre-poll mid-season prediction, just like one that is kind of based off of an eye test, but just kind of for fun of like, okay, this is what this is the possible scenario that I see happening. But whenever I finish my spreadsheet from that poll or from that spreadsheet, I will kind of come out with a more legit prediction of how I think the rest of the year will turn out. So if you're interested in that kind of thing, definitely stay tuned for next week. Now I'm trying to think of ways of making it interesting, because I know you guys probably don't want to sit here and watch me input data for a couple hours at a time. However, I guess kind of the intention of those streams is to be a chill stream, where you guys can come in and interact with me and we can talk football, college football. But I don't think that this channel is quite big enough yet to be able to do that sort of thing. So I may have to reserve that for like maybe next year or something. But I would love to be able to do that. And if you guys are interested in stopping by and chatting with me about college football while I fill out some of that stuff, definitely let me know in the comments that you are interested in being there, and I'll try to have like a solid schedule for you guys of when I plan on streaming. It'll probably be just about every night. But I'll let you guys kind of know what time that I plan on starting the stream. If you guys want to stop by, even if it's for just a few minutes, say hello, and then maybe have like a topic that you want to kick off that I can talk about while I fill out the information. By all means, that would be fantastic. So the more that engage with that, the better off things will be. Otherwise, you'll just sit me going, oh, this goes here, oh, that goes here, oh, that they scored this many points, blah, you know, and I can only make that so interesting for you guys. But I feel like being able to have conversations with you guys will definitely make that a more fascinating video series. So yeah, no, that is really all I have. This was a lot longer video, and it kind of is a much later video than I really wanted to do. It's gonna be any games that take place at 6 o'clock on Saturdays is gonna be hard to do a reaction video, because I want to, I want to up the quality for them, for you guys. But next week is Red River, and that takes place at 11. I should be able to do a pretty fast reaction to that video, or to that game. So I plan on doing that fairly soon after the game. Now I'm gonna be watching it with my family, and so I will have to come home first before I can stream that. So it'll be a little bit of time, but I plan on coming fairly soon after that game. So just stay tuned for that. But I will also do a preview video for it as well, and I'm going to try to do the best that I can to get that taken care of on Thursday, because that is the day that I want to do it. That's like, I've kind of been paying attention to all the other streamers and YouTubers, and they kind of seem to be posting their previews on Thursday as well. So I kind of want to hop on that bandwagon and kind of join all of them. So all of that information is, for you guys, and you guys can pick and choose who you guys want to listen to. But I've been a little late these last couple of weeks, and I'm gonna try to do better about that, and I want to get on a solid schedule, because solid schedules probably will help the algorithm. So if I try to change things up too much, then I'm probably handicapping this channel. So I want to try to do everything I can to get these videos out there to you guys. So if you made it this far, I really do appreciate it. And once again, if you followed along at all with this channel, you know that I tend to ramble at the end of my videos, like I am right now. But I hope you guys enjoyed this reaction, both to the Oklahoma and Iowa State game, as well as the AP poll reaction. Overall, I'm very excited. It's OU Texas week, and it's going to be probably the biggest OU Texas game in several years, and I am very excited. I cannot wait to see how this Big 12 thing shapes out. So I mean, it'll be kind of crazy if the two teams that are leaving the Big 12, if those are the two teams that make it to the championship game. I'm very interested in seeing how that pans out. But yeah, no. Once again, thank you guys so much for watching, and you don't necessarily have to leave a like or even subscribe if you don't want to. It does help if you do, but I definitely want to get some feedback going. So the comment section is there for you guys, and if anybody is commenting in the live chat, I really haven't been paying attention to the live chat. I don't really have any of that booted up to where I can see the live chat, because this is more of just a reaction video. But I do want to do more discussionary videos. So if you had a question, or you wanted to say something or say hello, feel free to do that in the comment section after this video, because once the video finishes, it'll be put up on YouTube, and it'll be available for anybody to watch, and they can comment there, and that'll be the best place to comment on the video. So once again, I do appreciate it, and I keep saying that, so I'm just gonna go ahead and say have a great week, and I will see you guys in the next one. You guys take care.